Today we're still in Chapter 1, Section 1, Scarcity and the Science of Economics. I'm going to go through and talk to you through a little bit of the vocabulary terms. It might be confusing because this might be the first time you might experience some of these terms. So the first one that we have in the book is the term durable good. And what a durable good is, it's one that lasts 3 or more years when you use it on a regular basis. Durable good examples could be tools such as robots, welders, tractors, or consumer goods such as automobiles. So something you purchase that you know that you're going to use for several years in that aspect. Usually it's used for a purpose and it gives you some sort of benefit. Another vocabulary term is a non-durable good. And it's an item that lasts for fewer than 3 years when used on that regular basis. Food, writing, paper, and most clothing items are examples of non-durable goods. Now I know there's examples where you could have clothing or boots for several years, but a food for thought is, what could you use regularly and will it actually still last in quality? Those things would be non-durable goods. So things like food, canned vegetables, that would be something that you could have on a shelf for several years, but can you actually use it for several years? On the opposite end of the spectrum, we talk about consumer goods. And it's a good intended for final use by individuals such as shoes, shirts, or automobile, meaning that we only create it for the use of private industry or private people so that they could have some sort of benefit from that good. And the final good that we're talking about is a capital good. And it's a tool or a good such as machinery or equipment that are used by a business to produce other products. So my example up there would be a meat slicer. You would only buy a meat slicer to slice meat, so your final product would be the meat that you're actually slicing. So that would be the example of a capital good. In your book, it's also talking about different types of assets. And this is the best way to explain it here is you have tangible and you have intangible assets. They're all part of wealth. And we talked about wealth before as the money that you have or the value that you hold, whether it be in products or investments. The best way I say is the tangible assets at the bottom, something you could actually physically touch. Something that you got. So if, for instance, you have a checking account and you got interest on that checking account and you access it, that would be a tangible asset, meaning that would be the money that you would have. An example on this chart here, you have equipment, machinery, buildings, vehicles, stocks, lands, and cash. Something physically you can touch. On the other side is intangible assets. And those are things that you actually cannot touch. So things like trademarks, franchises, copyrights, licenses, goodwill, patents, brands, everything that actually brings value to you or to your company, but you can't physically touch it, meaning that you can't really go out there and move it or sell in a way that wouldn't have a negative effect on your business. One here we have is the paradox of value. The paradox of value is, what value do we see in an item? Something like water. We can't survive without water. But the amount of money it's actually sold for is much less than a diamond for that instance. So even though a diamond doesn't bring anything to us besides maybe a little bit of happiness, the whole idea of the paradox of the value is that water can make you survive, but we only see it worth a little. Where a diamond brings nothing besides happiness, but we see it worth a lot. The example again says, I'm Miss Diamond and I cost $1 million for a small bit of me. And the water on the right side costs just a little bit, but one you can survive with, one you can't. And what they offer is a term called utility. And that's a capability or capacity to be useful and provide satisfaction. Utility is what the items are, something that's fixed or measurable. What happiness or what use does it have for me? So water, in utility purposes, would have much more value than the diamond that we have talked about before. There are 3 main questions that are going to be discussed in the book and the reading also, and those are the questions of what the society faces. What to produce, how to produce it, and for whom to produce. This chart on the left shows you an example. We all have unlimited wants, and we all have limited resources. And what that leads us to the idea of scarcity, which we defined in the first lecture. Scarcity is making sure that we can use the most limited amount of resources we have to satisfy as much of the want that we possibly could get there. So because of scarcity, we're forced to make choices. We're forced to make choices as a person. We're forced to make choices as a government or society. And those choices, again, are what, how, and for whom. Meaning that if we only have enough water to go around, who is going to get it first? How are we going to get it there? And what are we going to produce with that? Other examples might be if we're looking at a natural resource like iron. What are we going to use it on? How do we prioritize what we make? Think about times of war. How do we choose what we're going to produce it, how we're going to produce it, and for whom are we going to produce for?